Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another round of the USRA America Le Mans Series. This time we are in VIR, a very twisty racetrack in the south of Virginia. My name is Anthony McCurry. I am joined alongside of the president of the USRA America Le Mans Series, Warren Keith. Warren, how are you doing tonight? It is going to be a challenge for these drivers tonight. VIR is not known to be a very easy circuit for, well, pretty much any series that really comes to this racetrack. It's a very long, very technical course. It's actually one of the shorter courses that we're running in this configuration that you can get in the circuit. It has many configurations. We're running kind of the international circuit, where it's pretty much a straight line towards the oak tree turn, which is, well, I mean, it's not really a straight line, it's twisty and all. But we're getting ready to go for 1 hour and 30 minutes here tonight for these drivers. They are rolling off to get us underway, and we'll look now through what is going to be your pole sitters for tonight's race. We have Alex Witt, I should say, starting on pole in Prototype 2. Alex Witt making his first start, I believe, in the American Le Mans Series tonight. He'll be driving that 94, very beautiful livery on that 94 car, I might add. Then you go down into your GT2 category. You've got Brody Gardner trying to double down from his win last week at Daytona. He will be driving the Corvette as usual. And down in the GT3 category, we've got a brand new driver also making his first start. Cody Hartz will be driving the 57 machine in that division, as we'll get these drivers ready to go for 90 minutes here, racing into the dim lighted facility here. It's a whole lot of lighting around this racetrack for these drivers to see, so they will be relying mostly on their headlights, as you can see throughout all these S's here. One of the more interesting tracks, I should say, that's existing in the world today is not a whole lot of it is straight lines. You have the front stretch and you have what we call the back stretch, which is pretty much the only time that you'll be in a straight line throughout the entire racetrack for any significant amount of time. Is this track is littered with plenty of bumps and turns and all kinds of things for these drivers to deal with when we get towards some darker hours. But Warren, we're getting into that point where all these drivers are kind of settling in. We've had two of our longer races out of the way. This one is going to be just over half the distance of those races. So what are you looking forward to tonight for some of these drivers? They go into sprint mode, and we're going to see them throughout the entire race, kind of race at a little different level of intensity. Something that these prototype drivers are going to have to remember is that this track is not very wide at all, not like the tracks we've been to so far. At Sebring, you had a bit of a wider areas where you could make some passes if you needed to, not the whole track, but some of the main straights that had some width to them. And at Daytona, it was pretty much you could pass wherever you wanted to. At this track, there's really not a whole lot of places that you're going to be able to get around slower traffic, so we'll have to keep an eye on those drivers throughout the night, as we should see another pretty commanding performance by a lot of these top prototype drivers. We'll have to see how Alex Witt does as he starts on the front row of the prototype class. As I see, looks like there's only 4 in that camera shot at the moment. Not sure if that's the case. There are definitely more than 4 of them that qualified. Let's see what happened to those drivers. If you notice in the GTs also, there's another new car. We'll get back to him and touch on him in a moment as we are getting them set up to go for 90 minutes here tonight at VIR, the Oak Tree Grand Prix, as safety truck will peel off and we'll get these guys underway. So you wait for the green flag. It's a long time that they have to wait, and the green flag is out now. We are underway here at VIR, and it looks like it's going to be side by side between Witt and Erb going into turn 1 between the prototypes. Whoa, from behind, Dan Neese, who has won every single race so far this season, decided to get in, and there's a contact between Erb and Witt, and that allows Neese to go through, and that was tonight's first contact between the two leading prototypes. Back there, they're spinning around. We're trying to get back to them as they've both gotten going the right direction, but so far early out in the race, we've seen some contact, and the full course yellow is out, and we continue our trend of having a full course yellow at the start of the race, as man, there was not a whole lot of room for those drivers to get around, and looks like Dan Neese will be the leader out of all of that, as he's got a pretty big lead now. All the prototypes had problems with that, so now it's going to be a GT2 running in second overall, as we are under the yellow flag conditions. Warren, that was incredible. He's probably dealing with some steward-like duties at the moment, as he's pulling double duty here tonight. But man, that was something intense that we saw. Yeah, there was not a whole lot of room at all. This track notoriously thin, not easy to make passes, and under the current situation that he was in, the braking zone, it's pretty short, I should say. As we take a look at a replay of what happened, just overcooked it getting in. That was in turn 1 under braking, and then out of turn 2, or out of the exit of turn 1, just spun around, and that's what looped him around, that being Witt. And it just not a whole lot of real estate for these drivers. I'm not really sure what happened to Witt, as we're going to get a look at what happened to Witt now. As Witt, I think he just made contact. I think it was just contact, or maybe he got on the rumble strip or something. We'll have to see. This is a replay of what happened to Witt's machine. I think there was some contact between him and Erb, it seemed. And that's what spun the 94 around the pole sitter in prototype, and that brought in a whole host of GTs I had to check up in order to avoid. But that is why we are under our first full course yellow of the night, hopefully our only full course yellow of the evening, as have some drivers getting back into form, as looks like that the only prototype to survive that is going to be your leader, Dan Neese, who is again trying to continue his string of good finishes. In fact, he's won everything in the Prototype 2 division at the moment, winning the 2.5 of Sebring and the 2.5 of Daytona. As we roll into one of our shorter races, the clock still ticks away. As if you're not familiar with the way that this kind of racing goes, is that doesn't matter what happens during the race, the time still goes down, and at the end of 1 hour and 26 minutes now, we will have our winners in all three classes. And speaking of classes, there are a number of the GT2s that find themselves in an interesting position, mainly our leader, who is looking at the back end of a prototype, sitting in second place overall, that being Brody Gardner, who is also coming off of a nice finish at Daytona, winning that race as he's swerving around the track, trying to do something. Not sure what Brody Gardner's doing. He's going on a bit of an excursion, trying to find some different alternative racing lines. That man behind him, Tyler Landenberg, is looking for a bit of Corvette redemption, as both Landenberg did not have a very good outing at Daytona. He had a good outing, but he'd have liked more than he got, as he is trying to get a Corvette 1-2. And I was talking about that another new driver, Spencer Madden, driving the only BMW in the field and looking quite lavishly, I would say. Indeed, they are in the GT2 category. GT3 is pretty much all Mercedes, as we have teammates, Hartz and Mann, at the, I'm assuming they're teammates, their schemes are similar. That might be false, but they are running very dominantly, as the entire class at this point is made up of the AMGs, as the AMG showed a lot of strength at Sebring. There were a couple of Audi drivers that chose the R8 over the AMGs, but the R8s did not have quite the run that they were wanting, and thus the rest of the drivers decided to go with the AMGs. As you can see, you got two of them leading now, and the rest are shortly behind as the prototypes are making their way up through the GT field. I believe this is a race control deal. Don't want to have them stuck behind the GTs and have more issues, as they are not battling for position, technically speaking. They are at this moment, but the speed of the prototypes is such that they would be passed by the end of the lap. So I'm not going to hold up these prototype drivers from the front of the field, as they're going to line up for, I guess we're going green this time by, as the lights on the safety truck has come off. And we'll get set to go again. A trend that we have had these last two races into this race, this third race, is that we always have a safety car early in the race. This one, all of them being, I believe, on lap 1. It happened at Sebring, Daytona, and now here. After that, it's pretty much all stretched out, and we go green from the end. So we'll have to see if that is indeed the case, as the sun begins to fade here in the southern part of Virginia at Virginia International Raceway. A very beautiful track that these drivers get to race at this evening, is famous oak tree turn, named famously for the oak tree that grows in that turn. I don't think it's there anymore. I actually think that they've cut it down in more recent years, and they don't have that turn there anymore, or that tree there. They have the turn, they don't have the tree there. And I'm going to see if we can quickly grab a word from Warren as to based on what we've seen tonight, is it I think that these drivers are going to have some more close driving like that, as we've seen them go into turn one at a blistering pace. And once these prototype drivers catch the traffic, do you think that's going to ramp up even more? I think he's dealing with some steward-like things. He's pulling, like I mentioned earlier, he's pulling double duty tonight, not really being able to have his attention drawn to one or the other. That's fine. We'll get these drivers ready to go. We have 1 hour and 21 minutes, 50 seconds. We'll give that about 21 minutes and 15 seconds by the time we get to the line, perhaps maybe even a minute and 20 even, as the safety truck will peel onto pit road, I should say, for the second time tonight, as we'll get these drivers ready to go again. Your leader in Prototype 2, that would be Dan Neese, Brody Gardner, and Corey Hartz makes up your rest of your leaders. As we go back to green, the prototypes get away. It looks like a much cleaner start from the prototypes this time. They're spread out going into turn one. Only 4 of them made the start for tonight, so we'll have to see how these drivers do throughout the rest of the races, or having a little bit of a moment blinking in and out. But so far, single file between these drivers, not quite going through these next couple turns. I believe this is turn 4 through 5. Witt, who has a fast car, trying to get around Blemmingrant's in the 99, but Blemmingrant's putting the block onto the 94. That's actually letting the GT drivers close up on this battle ever so slightly as we come through the twistiest section of this racetrack. It's nothing but turns and slight straights from here on out. Move being made to the outside of the 99. Give the position back to Witt. He's going to set his sights back on the lead of the race. And then back in, looks like GT2 has kind of gotten away from Tyler Landenberg. It is Gardner pulling out an advantage over his fellow Corvette driver. And then behind him, you have 2 drivers looking to get their first wins of the season, as well as Landenberg looking to get his first win of the season. We're looking at Spencer Madden in the BMW M8 and Shane Loveridge, which is trying to get that GT to be competitive. We haven't seen him be very competitive all season long, trying to get going something for this Ford program. And right now he's keeping up with our GT2 leaders, and he is the last GT2 on the racetrack, so he's got to keep up with them if he wants to have a chance here tonight. As we have a couple drivers that didn't make the start, actually 4 of them to be precise. James Sisko, another Corvette driver, did not make the start. Harrington and Hanna, which are in Corvette and a Porsche 919 respectively, also did not make the start. Kevin Hurley is running on the racetrack, now coming off of pit road. He is, I believe he started from the pit lane. There must have been some kind of issue with that car. Whoa, and there was an issue with one of the Corvettes in front. That was Landon. No, that was Loveridge. I'm sorry. That's on a Corvette. That's a Ford GT. And checked up a little bit going into turn 1, right in front of Hurley. But Hurley is now on the track, a lap down to the rest of the prototypes and pretty much the entire rest of the field. But he's going to try to get that car going very slow at the moment. Those tires not treating him very well in the early stages. Likelihood of another full course yellow is more probable than at other tracks, given the nature of this circuit being so close quarters. We also have not as many drivers at the start of the race this time around that we did in Daytona and Sebring. Certainly not as many prototypes. Only 4 took the start, and now Hurley on track making 5 on the day. Only 4 of the GT3 cars running, I'm sorry, GT4 2, I'll get the right number out eventually. Only 4 of the GT2s running out on track at the moment as well. So smaller field, giving some of these drivers a bit of a break as far as traffic is concerned. Dan Neese leading the way. He's led the majority of the laps run so far this season. I believe he led almost every single one at Sebring, and the same goes for Daytona, if memory serves. He got out to a big lead. He spun it a lot going into turn 1 and the exit of the bus stop. which ironically did bring out one of those yellow flags that we saw in that race. That race had two of them so far on the day one here. Alex Witt has made his way up to second place in prototype. He's actually now closing the gap to Dan Neese. So if there's anybody that has a car willing to make a charge on Dan Neese's perfect season, this would be the guy, Alex Witt in the 94. That's a beautiful livery on that car. I just realized, it took a second to look at it, and that's a very beautiful livery on that machine. Is going down what I consider the back straight. I'm not sure how many other people do. Is a lot of blind corners on this racetrack, as you see there, going into the last section of the racetrack. It's pretty much the fastest part of the track, and a blind corner up a hill and then down into a heavy braking zone. So you're really on edge throughout the entire race. There's not a moment to rest unless you're on the front straight or the back straight, as lights on the track are starting to illuminate as the sun goes down, and we're settling into a bit of a run. Gardner trying to get away from his fellow Corvette driver, being Landenberg, but Landenberg now trying to not hold up the progress of Kevin Hurley in that machine, as trying to get something going. Spencer Madison doing very well today. We're still early on in the race, but keeping pace with the Corvettes, which is something, a bit of a novelty in this series. Corvettes, ever since Sebring established themselves as the dominant car on the circuit, and at Daytona you had the Porsche that was keeping up with them. This race, there are no Porsches to deal with. However, you've got another German powerhouse running in the third place position. He's trying to catch up to Landenberg for a pass, and then in GT3, it's pretty much all clean and cut in there, as well as your leader is Corey Hartz and Sartaj Mann, who did a fantastic job at Daytona. He actually started the day flipping, ended up getting his way back going, and actually finished, I believe, top 3, if I'm not mistaken. And behind him, there goes Jordan Malcolm, the guy who won the race last week, spinning it around at the downhill part of the S's, and he's going to try and get back on circuit. He's lost every position he can, so now runs at the very end of the field in the 335. That is not what he needed. No contact was made. It looks like we're still going to be under green flag conditions for this race. The only time a full course yellow in this series comes out is if there are 2 cars involved and or contact is made between multiple drivers. Other than that, if one driver has multiple spins within a certain amount of laps, then a full course yellow gets called for that incident, as Jordan Malcolm tries to get himself back going. It's a shorter race, so not enough time really to sit back and enjoy the scenery. You have to keep going. It's an hour shorter than the races that we have raced previously, and one of the shorter races of the season, if not the shortest race of the season. There might be a couple shorter than this one. I have to look at the schedule once again, but have not done so yet. Dan Neese continues to go in the lead of the race as he's going through Oak Tree. Alex Witt falling back a little bit. Yeah, he's keeping the pressure on, and that's something that Dan Neese really hasn't had all season long. We're only 3 races in, not even 3 races into the season at the moment, and he really hasn't had the pressure of somebody chasing him down lap after lap. He's been able to basically run the races that he's wanted to from the lead of the race consistently. At Sebring, it was an interesting story for him coming out of Sebring, because he had actually raced the 6 hours of Sebring just before hopping in for 2.5 hours in our league. And so he had basically learned the entire track for 6 hours, had a setup carry over from that into the same car that he drove, and then basically won the race all out by about 2 lap advantage. And then that Daytona, it was shorter between the gap was shorter at Daytona. He didn't have the pace to make it 2 full laps around the entire field. He did, however, have multiple spins, which brought out a safety car late and bunched the field up. Lost the lead at a moment during the restart that second time, but kept it going. As you saw on the screen, speaking of spinning, Alex Witt almost spun it going into Oak Tree and got a little bit off the track into the dirt, and that was enough that it could have spun it around, but did not do that. We're still under green, and could have wiped out everything that we had built up. That is one way to get around a turn, for sure. Good old Scandinavian flick is made famous by several drivers, but I believe none more famous than Mickey Hakkinen. I believe he was the first one that really successfully did that. Being that, I think he made it practice to try and do that as well. Instead of shaving a car, he just did that on purpose, which gave a lot of heart attacks to a lot of the people involved with the team, but you know, just the nature of the driver, if you will, is. So he's actually made up a little bit of ground after having that incident. He's actually closing in on Dan Neese at the moment, which has opened up about a 3-second advantage, although it's going to start catching some traffic, and this is the trouble spot where we saw, you know, the stack up at the beginning of the race. He's now coming through Oak Tree. The bottom 2 GT3s are just now exiting, and they're going to go down the back straight as they're side by side, which is not what you want to see if you're Dan Neese. They do settle it out to 2-wide racing, but it's going to be Jordan Malcolm and Travis Stevens, and there goes your Prototype 2 leader through. No harm, no foul, but now that's going to have Alex Witt to have some issues, as he's going to catch them in one of the hardest places to pass throughout the entire track, the last section of the racetrack, as it's downhill, a couple of quick chicane type turns, and he's going to have to wait until he gets onto the front straight, which he will. As I'm looking on my relative, Spencer Madden in the BMW has gone off track. That is unfortunate for that team. We'll have to see if we can get a bit of a... Speaking of going off track, the leader, Dan Neese, has gone off track in that same breath. So, bending out of turn 1, we've got a battle for the Prototype 2 lead on our hands. We're not going to go and see what happened to Spencer Madden just yet. We're going to wait a minute and see if this battle heats up, as it's getting increasingly harder for these drivers to make their way around this track. Traffic is going to become a factor in a couple of moments, as they're going to catch them on the back straight yet again as they're rolling through the S's yet again. And now the gap is down to less than half a second. And these two drivers, you know for sure that if they get the chance to pass, Witt's going to take it. It's not often that we see these prototypes so close. And speaking of, it looks like Neese, through the same part of the track that Witt lost his car, is now going to lose his, but the gap stays the same, as Witt had to check up to avoid Neese. Oh man, this is scary. I don't like watching a prototype. It was a good move, and now he's flashing the lights, trying to get the GT out of the way. And no, not in that section of the racetrack. That goes, I believe that was Sartaj Man that went off the racetrack, and now Neese and Witt continue to battle. The gap somehow has stayed the same from the time they started the lap to the time they're finishing the lap. It's stayed the same, and that's something that I think is surprising given all that just happened throughout this lap. And we still have a long way to go in this race. We're not even 30 minutes into the race, and this is the battle for the Prototype 2 lead. The first time that I've said this season, a battle for the Prototype 2 lead this late into a race, and it's right there, closed up to the gap. They're going to go through the S. Is not a good place to make a pass. Going to try and do it again. Coming through to the oak tree turn. They got one more left-hander make, and then they're into that section of the racetrack. We saw Nice lose it here a lap ago. Are we going to see him do it again? No. Keeps it steady. He's got to get it around a GT3. That is the leader in GT3. Going around him, put us in a lap down. We have to, again, mention that the GT3 lead is opened up quite a bit, almost by an entire straightaway. Now the gap opens up between Nice and Witt. It seems like that Nice is having to struggle in Sector 1, but it seems that Witt struggles in Sector 3. GT2 traffic now is slightly faster than GT3, as he's gonna have to stay to that outside line as Witt comes through trying to get that position, and now he does. As we're gonna start another circuit around, and these are fast lap times. We're seeing 135s from these two leaders, 137s actually, as we look up now as tires are starting to wear out. Still very early on in the race. We've got about an hour and 6 minutes to go still, which is, it's not a whole lot. It's not a long race when you consider the races that these drivers have done recently, but still, if you're going to battle like this, it's going to be a long race. You're wanting that clock to count down as much as possible if you're Dan Nice. As we continue to monitor that battle, we're going to quickly touch on where your other class leaders are running. Brody Gardner has escaped from Tyler Landenberg out to about a 6.5 second advantage over his fellow Corvette. That will be the gap back to him, and then it's about a 25-second gap back from Landenberg to Loveridge. So GT2 pretty much the way it's running as far as that goes, and no close battles. We'll have to find out what happened to Madden later on. And there's Corey Hartz, who's actually about ready to catch Loveridge. He's not too far behind. He is your GT3 leader. Scott Rankin, Sartaj Mann running first or second and third place, back up to the prototype lead, and it's still very close between Nice and Witt. These two are going to be next to each other throughout the rest of the race, I guarantee you. It's a long way to go still. 1 hour, 4 minutes, 50 seconds remaining as the sun continues to go down. And if you think the track is difficult to manage at this stage in the race, it's only going to get worse from here on out. As the track lighting at VIR, well, there's none of it. There is no track lighting here at this circuit that is anything substantial for these drivers. So these drivers are going to have to rely solely on their headlights throughout the rest of the night if they want to continue to hold their positions. And we have seen in situations where you have nothing but your headlights to work with. You think the most famous example that is current at the moment is the N24, the Nordschleife circuit. That track, pretty much most of the lap is done in complete darkness. This track, kind of similar in a sense, as there are a lot of rises and falls, a lot of elevation changes, a lot of quick turns that have sudden dips and drops, and similar style to that. So if you're good at the Nordschleife, you might have something here as they're going around the final part of this track yet again, and the battle is still close. Once we get into that night time, it's going to be crucial for these, especially these prototype drivers who have to get around traffic. Also, the slower traffic for the prototype drivers, they have to be aware of their surroundings, knowing that there is a faster car coming up on them. These drivers have the same colored headlights. It used to be, a long time ago, well, actually really not that long ago, it used to be where the GTs would have yellow headlights. Not so much a practice much anymore, as I think it was just kind of common knowledge that if you saw a pair of headlights closing in on you very quickly, it was probably not in your class, as they're trying to make quick work of Tyler Landenberg, which is actually putting himself in a pretty good position for a pick for Nice as he's holding up Witt. There's just nowhere to pass in that section. Oh, if only more racetracks had air conditioning, I think more summer races would be a little bit more bearable. Oh, what I wouldn't give to have AC at Le Mans. That would, I think you'd have a much. And there's already a large turnout, but I think that'd be a much larger turnout if there was AC there. Racing now, the gap has gotten bigger between Witt and Nice's. It's a crisp, cool October night here in VIR. I only live about an hour away from this circuit. I've never actually gone to this circuit though. I've wanted to. They have track days available that I would like to go out and race, but never seem to really get around to doing so. And oh yeah, if you weren't watching our race last week, to put it lightly, if the devil had his way, he would have chosen the track temp. The Florida sun was baking on Daytona at that time, and what was it? Something like 130 degrees at some point in time. Something like that. We'll look at our track info at the moment as Nice has made quick work of our GT2 leader, and now Witt is doing the same. Our track info tonight, a much more reasonable outside temp of 82 degrees on par for this time of year in Virginia. It's it's never really cold except for maybe 3 weeks out of the year, and then it's right back to being mid 50s is about as cold as it gets. And this being the track temp also being 2 degrees warmer than that at 84 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind speed, a blustery 12.3 kilometers from the west. But depending on these drivers, which is actually blowing in towards turn one. And it would make sense that we've seen some of these drivers have issues going into Oak Tree as the wind is actually blowing against their car as they go through that section of the racetrack. So might actually, that might play into why some of these drivers have tried to loop it going through there instead of taking a more reasonable line. The shark fin doesn't help at all in these prototypes. If you're new to GT racing, the shark fin, and here's a bit of prototype 101. The shark fin was only put in, I think, as a safety measure. I believe Peugeot was the first to do it. That was in 2011, and I think actually they were the first, and then I believe that Audi was also doing that at during the beginning of their R18 program as one of our GTs go off track. I believe that's Rankin. That is Rankin. That's gone off track in turn one as he's gotten back on. But that was the safety thing, I believe, that the reason for having the fin on the car, as oh, there's definitely an aerodynamic benefit to it. I remember vaguely reading at one point in time there was a reason why the fin was put in to the prototypes, and it was just kind of weird that it seemed like every team did it all at the same time. It might be wrong. So aerodynamic benefits, totally. There's definitely an aerodynamic benefit. to having not only a coupe, but having a fin on a coupe. Basically getting to control the wind wherever you want it. Think of it as a tail on an airplane. Whenever you're going through a turn at high speeds, you're flicking the car in, and now the wind is pushing against the side, making the side of the car react differently to the wind. Actually, plant it onto the racetrack. It lets you get through the turns much quicker. That's why we saw a sudden jump in speed as well, because between the R15 and the R18, there really wasn't that much difference in terms of power output. However, the design was completely different as we saw those from those two cars. And somewhere that you really noticed the difference was the Peugeots, because they were basically running the same car from 2010 into 2011. And the 2010 edition, I believe, had a tiny one. 2011 had a little bit bigger one. And the 2009 one that won Le Mans didn't have one at all. And there was already some speed advantages coming out of that. That's not to say that that might also be contributed to different power outputs and whatnot. However, yeah, the fin is definitely a staple in prototype racing nowadays, as you can see pretty much all prototypes in any division really running with them, except for maybe some smaller ones. When Prototype Challenge was a thing, they didn't have them. They ran very slowly. That is true. The LMP3s that I've actually liked the LMP3s, and I'm glad I read somewhere that they will be incorporated in the 24 Hours of Daytona next year, if I'm not mistaken. That would be fun. I would enjoy watching that, as there really is only one class in the WeatherTech series at the moment, that being DPI. As I say that, LMP2 is a class, but there's only 4 cars running that class at the moment. If you're watching this race and the Petit Le Mans happening at the moment. Dan Neese, speaking of Le Mans, is... So we're trying to get to him. There he is. Our camera's... He does. I was noticing on the relative that he was closing the gap, and that gap has closed back up to about where it was when we started this battle, with still not being able to find a place to put that car in order to get the lead of the race. And again, I think it really just comes down, there's only a couple places that you can really make a pass here, that being down into turn 1 and going down the straight after the oak tree turn. That's about the only place that you can really make a pass, unless you want to force the issue in some of the slower sections. Yeah, the dirty air is playing a huge factor into the outcome of these races. All cars with high downforce have that issue, is getting around another GT3 that I believe is Steve. No, that is Rain. That's Malcolm. Okay, how about that? It's Jordan. Must be that must be Hearts. That must be the leader, Hearts, because Malcolm, the first one on pit road, a lot of a lot of the GT3s look similar, so it's hard to tell them apart. The one that stands out the most is Rankin's car. It's bright white with a colorful side pod, and he stands out the most. These other ones, yeah, they're so tough to tell apart from each other. Now Malcolm is back on track. He made his stop. I don't know if that was scheduled. Surely it's not scheduled. see what he does as we continue to go around. As we're going to take a look at Justin Erb, who has found himself in a lot of interesting situations this season so far. Most famously at the season opener at Sebring, where he was literally scooped up and taken along for the ride on the first lap of the race. And, he still had a good finish after that also, which was even more surprising. Facing the wrong direction. Not how you want to start your season, going backwards, but still, he's doing well, running in third place overall and in class. I was going to say something, and I have seemed to slip my mind, so we will move on from that thought, and perhaps it will come back to me. Oh, I was going to say that that's the benefit of a long race such as an endurance race, where if you had a sprint race where it was a limited amount of laps where the race would be over, and say, take Formula One for example, your car goes out, you're done. It's as simple as that. But these cars are such where you can fix them back up, put them back on the racetrack, and you still have a long way to go. And as we saw at Sebring and Daytona, literally anything and everything will happen, and you might not find yourself running at the back of the pack for much longer after that. Never say quit is the motto for a lot of these drivers. Is I'm going to look at Eric Blemmengrantz, who is the last place driver in prototype at the moment, running he's about to be lapped by our two prototype leaders. I'm just looking at the relative. The 14 and the 94 are closing on him quick, about a minute and 40 behind. I'm sorry, a minute 30 behind is the gap between himself and Nice. And he's going through, and that would be Gt3 as well as Nice and Witt, so it's going to be very close battle. You never thought that you'd see in such a short race the prototypes pass another prototype to lap them, but that's the situation we're in, as Blemmengrantz has not gotten his race off to a very good start. Still one of the nicest liveries on the racetrack, one of the more American liveries on the racetrack, and he's running around very well at the moment. A fourth place finish would be about the worst he'd get if he continues to run the race. Even if he pulled off to the side of the race, the worst he's going to get is fourth in class. So only 4 prototypes running on track at the moment. He is looking pretty good, and those are valuable points. It's early in the season. I believe it's a 10 race season, as you said, so we have 7 to go after this race, and there's plenty of time that you can make up some spots, and we're going to some pretty interesting tracks later on this season that these drivers might want to circle on their calendar as potential race winners. Especially if Nice has a bad run at any of these races. And if Nice ever has a time where he goes out and finishes last in class, then any of these prototype drivers that haven't won so far, they're all of a sudden right up there that they have a shot to make it. And it's still very early on in the season, as he's going to catch some GTs in the most unopportune time as they're going through the last bit of the racetrack, all downhill, very wide off the track. And that's what we were talking about. That's not the place you want to pass. He's going to, that was an interesting rejoin onto the racing surface, but that is now going to be a new leader in prototype, as now Witt takes the lead. that. Looking at the time that we've ran, it's about 45 minutes into the race. Given that I don't think he was at the end of a fuel run, he would be good to go on fuel. I think he's going to split this race in half and take his service now. He's on pit road. Actually, hasn't gotten tires yet. We'll have to see if they jack the car up to get some tires. There might be something wrong with the suspension on that car. We'll have to come back and take a look at it. As now Rankin is getting passed by Witt. Now the battle for the prototype lead is gone at the moment. We don't know how long Nice will stay. In fact, he's now come back out on pit road, so he did take tires as he's back on the racing surface. And that was a scary incident for our leader, and that's what we were talking about. When the track closes up, there's nowhere to pass, and you kind of just have to wait. As much as you don't want to wait, patience is a virtue, and it almost proved that it not only taken him out, but it could have taken out 2 of our GT3s, which I don't think they'd have been too happy about that, given that it's still north of halfway. Speaking of halfway, we're about to cross halfway, 45 seconds from that. Yeah, it could prove to be the pitfall for some of these drivers if they're not too good at night racing. Is Brody Gardner? I'm sure that he's raced at night before, but this is only the second race in the season that we will have any time of darkness that we'll be in. As we started in dark early morning and then we went into daylight. And ooh, that was Landenberg. That was that was Loveridge. That's off the track. He's actually parked it and is pulling off to go to pit road, so that might bring our GT2 battle down to a 2-car fight between the 2 vets who are running on the track at the moment. Also into the pit road, that is the 57 of Hertz. That is your GT3 leader coming in to get his service. So GT3 leader deciding to do it now, as he can go the rest of the way easily on this last stop. A lot of these drivers opting for the one-stop races. It's really no need to pit twice in this race. As, being so short, you can split it in half and see him come out with a comfortable lead, I should say. He's got still, even after that stop, about a 31-second gap towards, about 35-second gap, I should say, back to Sartaj Man. Back going, and we will take a look at this beautiful facility here at VIR. We're going to take a quick commercial break. You won't miss anything, however, because we will go side by side with FRN, side by side sound and vision here on the Flatout Racing Network for the running of the Oak Tree Grand Prix. Your leader in class, Alex Witt. In the Prototype 2 class, Brody Gardner leading in GT3, and Corey Hartz leading in GT3. Brody Gardner leading GT2. I'll get those numbers right eventually. We'll be right back after this quick break. You won't miss anything. Welcome back to a very abrupt end to the commercials as the battle for Prototype 2 is heated up quite a bit actually, as during the commercial break it seemed that these two drivers got right back towards each other, that being Witt and Nice. And I think Witt has just come back on his outlap and he's had a very scary off as he's tried to keep it on the racetrack. Cold tires for that prototype. And you got to think that with the combination of cold tires, especially with a cooler night like tonight and cooler track temps, that it's going to be like skating on ice for a few laps. We'll have to see what he can do getting around this racetrack as Dan Nice on the hunt yet again for the Prototype 2 lead. It's about 3.5 seconds back towards the Prototype class. And, you know, there was a moment that we saw on screen where it seemed that Witt had a dive bomb move onto the inside of a GT exiting the pit lane, or coming around the pit lane, I should say. And now he is gotten back, trying to get those some heat into those tires running. Still about a 2-second gap between them now as he's actually slowing down a bit through that turn. We have a full course yellow on the racing circuit. So full course yellow. We're not rightfully sure why, but the full course has come out, our second one of the evening. And this is going to be some good news for some of these drivers, specifically Dan Nice, who was trying to get back what had happened earlier where he had an off track, but now he's going to be able to catch up back to Alex Witt. Justin Erb also is going to be benefiting from this as he was about a few laps time from going a lap down. So now he will be continuing to be on the lead lap within a chance to win this race overall. Gardner, Landenberg, still your top two in GT2. Hart and Rankin are top two in GT3, and the safety truck is back onto the racing surface. Alex Witt is going to be saying, thank you, I can get some heat in my tires now rather than struggle for the next couple of laps. We're not sure what happened to bring out our full course yellow. Nothing on the relative suggested that we should have one. I didn't see any slow dots on my track map, so we're going to say something is happening here. We'll have to wait for confirmation to find out. We'll see if Warren pops in with any information on why we might be under the full course yellow, as your leader going to be Alex Witt overall. So, to catch you up to speed, those that are joining late, it's a beautiful night here at VIR for this race. The sun is beginning to set. We are not very far away from having this track bathed in darkness, as this track does not have any sort of track lighting, so it's going to be all on the drivers to navigate this track once we do get those very few moments of complete darkness. And I don't even think it might be complete darkness. There might be a little bit of daylight at the very, very end of the race, but it's going to get dark very quickly. Your prototype lead has been challenged throughout the night. It's been Alex Witt and Dan Nice at the front of the field pretty much all race long, and it is going to continue to be a dogfight between these two. Nice had an off track earlier in the race, and that's why he's running in the second place position at the moment. Alex Witt was able to capitalize and take the lead. Both of these drivers have already come down for their service. The only driver on track at the moment, give that two drivers on track at the moment that have not come down for service. Your GT2 leader, Brody Gardner, has not come down for any service at the moment. He will have to. There's no way physically that he can make it the rest of the distance on that tank of fuel. And Travis Stevens in the GT3 machine will also have to come down pit road in order to get some service. That being the AMG. Most of the all of the GT3s are in AMGs tonight. Alex Witt doesn't have to pit again, so then these prototype drivers have to pit, so I don't think they'll be coming down pit road. I say that. Dan Nice has decided he wants to come down pit road, as well as Justin Erb. So both these drivers thinking that they can come down and get some service, as I think the prototypes had to make one more stop before the end of the race in order to make it the rest of the way, as Witt has, I think, done two according to my relatives. So that means that these other drivers will have to do some as well. Someone that is interesting that didn't come down, I don't think he was able to come down this time around, was the GT2 driver, although I think the GT's pit on the next lap. I believe that is how they do that in here. So, we're going to have 36 minutes to go in the race, as we'll take a look at an onboard here of our GT2 leader, his beautiful new Corvette C8 running around this track. C8R, I should say, this model particularly, as it has dominated in every facet of this series so far, as he's gone off track just a bit. Both the Corvette has won both of the 2 races that we've run so far, one of those being Tyler Landenberg, who won at Sebring, and Brody Gardner, who we're on board with, who won at Daytona last week. Both of those Corvettes showing immense pace amongst the rest of the field. We had a driver fall out earlier. I believe that is the reason why we don't see our BMW driver running on the track anymore, as we've had connection issues throughout the night, and they seem to continue. So you get a nice, beautiful look of the circuit. A beautiful, warm October's night in the south of Virginia, as we're going to keep going around for at least one more time before we set them back up to go to green sound and vision here on the Flatout Racing Network for the USRA American Le Mans Series. It's been that way for the last 3 races. Will continue to be that, I believe, into the future. We'll have to wait for confirmation on that. I do know that you will be able to watch some of these races on a separate network. I'm not sure which one exactly. They told me at the beginning of the program. I have forgotten since then, as we see Brody Gardner taking a bit of a detour just to explore the facilities a bit here. That is the, we leave the club circuit pit lane of this racetrack. VIR has got many layouts that you can choose from, including this one with a chicane on the back straight. We have opted to not have the chicane on the back straight, as we felt it was kind of not necessary. You can see part of that track there off to the right. That is actually not part of the circuit we're running tonight. There's a lot of ways that you can configure this track to have multiple layouts. It's kind of like Paul Ricard in that sense, where they have a lot of options as far as, you know, what track layouts you want and so forth. This track also is very elevation hungry. It's almost like some sections of the Nordschleife where you have a bunch of pits and dips and rises into the turns, and especially in the last section where there are a couple of tight downhill braking and then up a hill and then back downhill for another braking zone. As we are going to monitor these drivers as they come down pit road. These GT drivers now able to get their service, so that will put them more than good to go to the end of the race. And we will quickly step aside again. We're in the middle of a commercial break. We'll step aside once again for a commercial break as Gardner overshoots his pit stall, but we will come back momentarily. You won't miss anything here on the Flatout Racing Network, because we're going to go Flatout Racing side by side. We'll be right back after this message. We'll put these drivers back to green flag with about 30 minutes, call it a bit under 30 minutes by the time we get back to the line left in the Oak Tree Grand Prix here in the USRA America Le Mans Series. You're starting to see the headlights of these cars get a little bit more prominent on the racing circuit as the sun is going behind the hills here in Southern Virginia. We're about ready to get these drivers back underway for the rest of the race. Your leaders in class are as follows: Alex Witt, Dan Neese, Brody Gardner, and Tyler Landenberg. That's the top two in Prototype 2 and GT2. And then top two in GT3 are Jordan Malcolm and Corey Hartz. As we are about ready to set these drivers underway for the remainder of our event tonight, safety truck will come down onto the lane and we will get these drivers back underway as Witt gets a nice jump from Nice at the end of our safety car period here at the USRA American Le Mans Series. And it looks like the three prototypes, I should say, are going to be right next door to each other as they're going to go through turn one. Now, this is important for Nice as he was trying to catch back up to Witt after an off track that he had going into the final section of the racetrack. The uphill, downhill. He's trying to get around some GT3 traffic and ended up misplacing his machine, ended up into the grass. But given the safety car that has come out, he's been able to reel in the number 94 of Alex Witt. Alex Witt making his first start of the night, or the season, I should say. And he is doing very well as he's leading the race, actually starting to get away from the second place position, Dan Neese, who is trying to go for three wins this season. Back here, you got Brody Gardner, who is trying to get around some GT3 traffic in his Corvette. He is your leader in GT2. He is very tight indeed going through Oak Tree. There's a lot of drivers in a short span. You have Blemingrantz back here also trying to get in. All three of our classes represented in the same camera shot. Is now looks like Gardner is going to get around. But Warren, since you're back, would you mind filling us in on what the safety car was for? All right, and that is why we were under our second safety car. I didn't see that on my relative, so I didn't call it out, but thank you for filling us in more. You are the information lord, as I'm going to start calling you now. And that is critical. Alex Witt also has had some issues happen with him as he's now going by Herb. Something happened to our prototype leader while we were looking back at the battle going through GTs. So Dan Neese is now the leader. I'm willing to bet he had an off as well. Indeed, he has got a gigantic lead at this stage in the race, a 7.1, 7.2 now second lead over the second place Witt, which, you know, given the fact that we've seen that some of these drivers have had issues with braking zones, specifically in turn one at the very beginning of the race, we saw, I believe it was Nice that overshot it going into that section to begin with. And getting into the back of Herb, I believe it was, and then sending Herb into Witt, or Witt into Herb. It was something like that. And speaking of off track, Dan Neese has an off track, a slight off track going through turn one. He's gotten it back on the racetrack. He's lost a considerable amount of time back to Witt, who I think got through that turn cleanly this time. And now he's going to try to keep away from that number 14, or that 94, I should say. And no, we've seen a lot of drivers recently. I believe it's due to the fact that a lot of these prototypes elected to come down, get some tires, and maybe there wasn't quite warmed up enough. Or that it's just getting late into the race. The track conditions are changing. The track temp is getting cooler. It's going to get a lot harder for some of these drivers if you have colder tires to make any kind of stop, as getting heat into them is going to be of a premium. But that is your battle for prototype, as up in GT, it is still Gardner and Lannenberg, the only two Corvettes running on the track at the moment. Shane Leverage is actually running back on the circuit again. He had a bit of a equipment issue, I believe it was, that he had to sort out. So he's gotten back onto the racetrack. It's going through the S's. Well, the first section of the S's right now is, so far, a lot of these drivers having a good outing that we normally wouldn't see. Leverage especially, he's got a top 3 right now at the moment, which, considering all that's happened, is, you know, it's big for him, considering he needed something like this coming into this race. At the GT3 battle, as he said, Malcolm and Hart's battling close together. Malcolm, I believe this is the first time he's led tonight in the GT3 category on the racetrack, as now he's trying to go for another win on the season. He won last week, and I believe he also won at Sebring, so looking for 3 for 3 in that category. But he's got Corey Hart's all over the back end of him, and as we start getting into more darkness, and as Herb tries to go through these two, it might be a little bit harder for these drivers to really get something going, as the lights on the track are starting to illuminate from the headlights. We got a side-by-side battle for GT3 going into turn number 3, I believe this is. And now it's still Malcolm out front, but you know Hartz wants to get around him. He's got the speed. He knows where he has to do it. Malcolm hasn't had the fastest car all night. Hartz has had one of the fastest cars all night, and he's trying to put his Mercedes AMG where he needs to do it, but he's also holding up the progress of Herb, who is now falling back into 4th in class. All right, he's going to try and do it. He's got the speed. Ooh. Ooh. And they're sliding over the top of the hill. I don't like the way that car was sliding as he crested the hill going into Oak Tree. But man, and like you said, Rankin is within earshot. You see Hart's flashing the lights, trying to get into the head of Malcolm, and Malcolm flashes them back, saying, "You want to pass me? Come get me," as he's driving away at the moment. But now, going over the hill, down the back straight, going into this last section, which has been crucial for a lot of these drivers, especially the prototype drivers. This is where you can gain a lot of time, especially in the lower class. These GT3s, they have a lot of aero that they're dependent on, but they're not so much like the prototypes. They can get right to the back end, and they are right on the back end of each other going through here. And Rankin coming in, 3-way battle. I'm excited for this. We're gonna stay here. This is the best battle on the racetrack at the moment, and it is for your GT3 lead. 22 minutes to go in the race, and Warren, we're getting into crunch time for these drivers. It's a much shorter race, like we said at the top of the program, so normally we would just be settling in for a long run. We've only got 21 minutes left, and he slides going into 1. That's going to open the door. Scott Rankin going to use those new tires to his advantage. He was running last place in class not more than 20 minutes ago. Now finds himself running 3rd place in class, hunting down the leaders, at least for 2nd place, as Malcolm seems to be slow, although he's off the track a little bit. Got to get back on track, does Rankin, and he does. This track showing to be tough on these drivers. Normally we see Sebring was tough on the drivers for sure, but there wasn't these elevation changes like we see at this track, which throws an entirely new category of driving style into the mix. And we're not going to see elevation changes much like this at any other track that we're going to on the upcoming season. The other one I could think of would be Laguna Seca, and I want to say Road Atlanta would be the next one that'd be closest to that. as far as elevation changes go, but wholesale, this one has got the most elevation change out of all the tracks we're going to go to this season. As I think Malcolm's off the track again. He is again off the track in the final turn. That's going to give the position to Rankin. Second place goes to the 156. And we'll have to wait for that, as we are still quite a ways from that battle happening. As the lead in Prototype is all but over, or the battle I should say is all but over, as Nice is pulled to about an 8-second gap to Alex Witt, which is significantly more than what he had going into the couple laps ago. Looks like that Dan Nice cruising on to hopefully close out this race with another win. It's not been easy for him, we got to say that up front. He's had quite a few ups and downs in this race thus far, and just trying to finish out the day with a good run, and so far doing well, but he's got some more GT traffic he's got to deal with, that being one Loveridge in the Ford GT. Gonna close up on him very shortly. And that looks like the only one he'll have for at least a couple of corners, as the next one would be the 24. That being Travis Stevens, who is the last car on the track running overall anywhere. He's 12 overall, and oh goodness gracious! And he's off track, and that he's towed at the pit road. Well, this has opened the door significantly for Alex Witt, as he now takes the lead. Dan Nice might be out of this race. He hit the tire barrier a ton. We're going to go back and look at that. But man, Dan Nice has gone off track, and that has opened the door significantly for a lot of these drivers. He couldn't save it from going in, and he wedged it into the tire barriers, could not get out. And you think that maybe if he had tried to pull it out, if he had any semblance of pulling it out, that he might have been able to do it, but could not do it. And I think he has officially retired from the race, did Dan Nice. So now it's all Alex Witt, who is running in a very good spot, as he's going to be about 28 seconds back to Blemmingrans. So if he loses the lead now, it's all on him. The first retirement of the season for that team, and it happened in race 3, leading the race, getting off onto the grass. And these tires, I mean, you know as well as I do, you get off on the grass in these cars, you can save it, but it's really difficult, especially at this track where there's a lot of ruts in the grass. It's super hard to come back for something like that. And Dan is going to fall back quite a bit. The worst he's going to get in class is 4th, but overall he's now in 6th. And in the next 2 laps, we should see most, if not all, the rest of the GT3s pass him on the racetrack for position. In the next 4 laps, we'll see Travis Stevens pass him to put him 12th place overall in this race if he does not get back on the racetrack. All that to say, Alex Witt is now back in the lead of the race. 15 minutes and 45 seconds to go in the race, and kind of in control of his own destiny at this point. Not really much that he can do that he hasn't already done. He's got a 30-second gap back to Blemmingrans, who that might be a battle room between Blemmingrans and Herb in a few laps' time, because Herb is faster than Blemmingrans, and he's closed the gap to about 7 seconds. we should keep an eye on that. All the while, the battle in GT3 had sparked up, then fell apart. Malcolm fell back after going off track. Rankin is trying to close down Hartz for the lead of GT3. It's about 6.8 seconds back. Still a little bit of time left, 15 minutes to go in the race. So if you have anything for the leader, you have to do it now, because Hartz has got a pretty good advantage over him, and he's got Tyler Landenberg in between the two of them. Landenberg is a much faster car. We'll be able to make the pass easily once we get close to that. But we've seen a lot of off tracks, and I'm almost hesitant to call things official until everyone's taken the checkered flag, as the lead in prototype has swapped. Speaking of the lead in prototype, Alex Witt is slow. Alex Witt is pulling off track. He's actually gotten off into the chicane section of the racetrack. Something has happened to this leader. We don't know what's going on. I think he's lost power, trying to refire it. He's lost the lead to Eric Blemengrantz and Justin Erb as he's trying to get it back going. The car is stalled out. And Alex Witt has gone out of the race. So this leaves Justin Erb and Eric Blemengrantz, the leaders of this race. He must have done something spectacular. That has taken out two of the most dominant cars all night long are out of this race. The leader of the race, we have to admit, has not been the fastest at the prototypes, continues to be the slowest one. He's actually getting run down by Erb at this moment. And this has put Brody Gardner in a very interesting position. He's running 3rd place overall. Now Tyler Landenberg running 4th place overall in those two Corvettes. So the GTs are going to have a step up on the overall podium. This is something special for these drivers tonight. VIR, a combination of VIR and the fact that these cars, some of these drivers aren't very familiar with this track, but GT racing, endurance racing never fails, as we have non-stop action all over the racetrack, and the stories that happen throughout the race, they just seem to evolve over and over and over and over. No one would have said that Eric Blemengrantz would be leading this race at this stage of the race. 12 minutes to go, coming up in a couple of seconds. Now, he's got to defend for his life, though. He's not the fastest car. Justin Erb is the fastest car. And if you're Justin Erb, then you've seen the door that's been opened for you. Now you have a chance to run down the leader. We're getting into darkness. The last 10 minutes are going to be the darkest part of this entire race. You know, you want to finish the race quickly. You want to be able to establish your dominance. But at this stage in the race, it's more or less just about survival, seeing what's happened to the other two drivers. And now you're thinking, well, what if it happens to me? I have to be careful, but you can't be careful. You have to run with aggression the entire rest of the race. And it's going to be a fantastic battle between these two prototypes who are still seeking their first win of the season. They've started both the two races we've had before this, and now this one. Blemengrantz, a decent showing at Sebring, could have done better at Daytona, wanted a better run at Daytona. Now he's running first place. Justin Erb, again, started the season facing the wrong direction on top of another car's nose. Now finds himself in 2nd place in that Acura, looking for Acura's first win of the season. The plot thickens. Now, we still have some traffic that we have to deal with. We have the GT3s to deal with and Jordan Malcolm. Malcolm is going to be the next car that they catch. I'm a little bit nervous when we get around some of these cars because we've seen time in and time out, once we get close, especially in the middle part of the racetrack, We see the drivers make the most mistakes. Can they get around in the next 10 minutes? 10 minutes, a 10-minute dash at the end of the race is going to solve everything that we start. And Blemengranz is off the track and is into the tires! And now Justin Erb is going to be your leader! Blemengranz has gotten it out of the tires so he can keep going. He didn't have to tow it back to pit road, but he's effectively thrown away his shot at the win. I'm not going to say anything because we've seen every single prototype have an off track at least once in this race, Erb included. And he's going to get around some GTs. Wow. Wow, this has been something special. If you're tuned in to watch this race, you have been treated to quite the excursion. We have 11 of our drivers still running. Dan Neese has officially parked and will finish the day in 12th position overall. This is interesting to watch. It's proper sprint racing from these endurance style cars, and man, it's I don't want to say anything about the lead of the race anymore. In fear of jinxing Erb, is Blemengranz is still running. He's very slow though. He's much slower than he was. He is going to continue to run in second place overall though, which is important. He wanted to get out of the tire barrier and at least finish the race in second if he can nurse the car around to finish in that position. He's got a lap lead over Brody Gardner, so there's no threat of losing the position to the GT2 leader. Speaking of the GT2 leader, he's had a flawless day, has Brody Gardner, running in the third place position overall. That is incredible for this team, looking to get an advantage any way that they could. He might be able to hold on for this lead. He's going to go 2 for 2, winning at Daytona and winning here if he can indeed do so. And we look back to GT3, which has got wholesale the most cars running on the track at the moment, as all 5 drivers that started the race are still on the racetrack. And the lead has about 6 seconds now. But that battle between second place doesn't exist because that was actually a prototype that I was looking at the background. That's actually just an Erb catching up to this traffic. We have to pay attention to this. This is where we've seen a lot of these drivers have issues. It has turned into a battle of survival, more or less, over the course of this hour and a half that we've run. We've gone this far, about the length of a football match for those who are use the proper term for the correct sport. And now we're getting into the crunch time for the rest of the race. 6 minutes 50 to go, and we have more GTs we have to get around in the late stages of this race. And again, I'm hesitant to say anything just based on what we've seen here tonight, but gets around this one okay. Now he's going to have clean track in front of him until he gets to the 91 of Landenberg, so he can coast. He's got a 20.5-second gap back to Blemengranz. At this point in time, he can run his race. I wouldn't push it. The less amount of laps you have to do, the better. There's no set lap quota for these drivers. It's basically just to get to the end of the timer. That's all you got to do. And so far, he's just got to close out this race. And if he can do that, a first-time winner for this Acura team. Going into this season, Acura had high hopes. Qualified well for Sebring, qualified well for Daytona. Just didn't have the finishes to back up those qualifying runs. Now looking for a overall win at possibly the craziest race that we've had. It's a young season. We'll give it that. Still plenty of races to go throughout the season, but still craziest race that we've had so far. And you know, once these drivers get to Belle Isle, that might change at Belle Isle, because you know that's just crazy by default. But he's got some more traffic to deal with. He's going to get around nice and easy through turn 1. 5.5 minutes to go. Warren, this has been an epic showdown of the prototypes. Oh, he's off! He's off the track! Oh, he saved it! That was incredible. That was a fantastic save on the 23. By way of being the only survivor. Wow. And you make a mistake here, and it's almost impossible to come back from a mistake, especially if you start bouncing through the section of the track where it's the most rough, and that was the part he was in, and man, that could have ended so many ways, but it ended the best way I think it could have for him. Whew. All right, now that the heart attack happened, I think that he can rest easy. I would go easy these last 2 laps. We've got 2 laps to go. The sun dipping down behind the hills. A beautiful, absolute pristine night here in VIR for the close of this race. And before we end the race, Warren, I gotta give you some time, since you didn't have time to do it last week at Daytona. We'll give you some time to kind of plug the series and where it's heading through the rest of the season. You got about 3 minutes to do it, but what? It just proves that some of these series that drivers get into, that, like you said, to do practice for longer races, for bigger races, it's valuable for them. Don't ever discredit the smaller leagues in any league, really. iRacing and in the real life counterparts, don't discredit those smaller leagues, because those are some stepping stones from some of the drivers that you might say are the best drivers in the world. They had to start somewhere. And these drivers, they get their practice in, they can go and they can say that, yeah, it was because I practiced at this track in this series that I was able to get this result in, the bigger endurance races that they do. And so it's really fun. I've had fun this entire season so far. 3rd race into the season out of 10. And I got to say, I'm a fan of the USRA ALMS, and I had trouble saying the name of the league and the series at the beginning when we first started out. To be fair, I was kind of thrown in last minute, but it all worked out very well. And I had a lot of letters and numbers going through my brain at the time, and I was like, oh, that's the name of this one. Yep, you got it. And it did it. And when my brain needed it most, it did not quite get it out. But there, you see Justin Erb has been on the screen. That's because we just wanted to make sure nothing's happened to him this last couple of laps, and something almost did. We'll quickly go back to your GT2 leader, who is going to still be Brody Gardner, as the track is very dark at the moment. They only have to run a couple of laps like this. Yeah, this is, if you thought it was dark before, this is dark. And it's still got some dark to go. So the headlights are going to be even more crucial for these drivers, as the Corvette's got big enough headlights you could probably see for miles if you had a unlimited view. But as we look at Corey Hart, who is got a commanding lead over Scott Rankin, this GT3s have been close on the racetrack, but this is not for position, as we are coming now onto the final lap of the race. So Corey Hart's running 5th place overall, so great showing for the GT3s as well. Justin Erb is on the final lap of the race. as he has taken the white flag. 1 lap to go, 30 seconds technically remaining in the race. However, this is going to be the final lap for the Acura team, who has, since the start of the season, we touched on it earlier, has had all sorts of races happen so far, starting the season quite literally facing the wrong direction, and now finds himself leading what could be the most chaotic race of the season so far, as he has got a 35-second lead. He's slowed way down compared to some of his other laps, does not need to push whatsoever, and at this point, I don't think you really would want to if I was that driver. Brody Gardner, we touched on it just a few moments ago, will be finishing out the day with a victory in GT2 if he can get it around the race track in one piece. Corey Hartz will do the same in GT3 if he can get around the track, no problem. Warren, it's been quite the race, and I think that Justin Erb is just looking for the line. As he comes around the final section, these final turns, which really decided the fate of this race. If we go back to it, think about the first time that Dan East went off track, that set the stage for the rest of the race. Justin Erb, his first win of the season in the 23 Acura, comes across the start-finish line to win here at VIR overall and in Prototype 2. Fantastic run for the 23 team. A battle of attrition and a battle of survival, and he has been the best of all these drivers here tonight. As Brody Gardner, who has not finished the race yet, we'll go back to him as he's coming around. I think he's got a long way to go, given on the section of the racetrack he's at. He was in front of the leader, I believe, when he came around, so he's still got quite a ways to go if he wants to finish this race, but not a he's got a big enough gap. We'll quickly look to our Gt3 winner, which is going to be Corey Hartz in the 57 AMG, going to cross the line, wins, and as the guy beside him spins it at the line, and he's going to win the race. Man, there's always someone trying to upstage you, I'm telling you. Trying to steal the show as we look back to the only driver left running on the racetrack, barring, actually, there's a couple drivers left running on the racetrack, but the only leader running on the racetrack at this moment, the only GT2 other than Leverage that has yet to finish the race. He can coast, flashing the headlights. He knows he's won. He just has to make it to the line. That Corvette team winning last season and now coming into this race winning again. Brody Gardner looking to set himself up as a dominant force in the GT2 class here in the USRA LMS. Comes around the final turn. It's going to go across the line. A win in GT2. A second win for this Corvette team. Brody Gardner gets the win here at VIR. And you gotta be thinking that he's feeling good about that. Didn't make any mistakes so far this race. Hasn't made a mistake this season, to my knowledge, as he goes for the win in the last car to finish the race. A beautiful car, I should say. That 4GT's lights are beautiful always and will forever be beautiful, as he's the last car to cross the line here tonight. He will get a 10th place overall and a 3rd place in class. So a podium spot in class. Can't not be upset about that, as he had a great run on the racetrack. But Justin Erb burning it down in front of the pit road and in front of the many oak trees on this racetrack. Its track is famous for them, as he is your overall leader or winner in this race. So Warren, fantastic race by the USRA guys tonight, and it was really down to who could survive, more or less, and Justin Erb proving that he was the one, despite having issues himself, to survive against the just the overall impending doom as the circuit seemed to be tonight. It does indeed. He will be enjoying that position, and we'll have to see what he can do for the rest of the season, as he is going to be a presence felt as Dan Neese went out of the race pretty or late in the race, I should say, and he is not going to get the best of finish tonight. He's actually going to finish 12th overall, so last of all the drivers that were left running, but not last place of all the drivers that took the start. So that's something that he can at least say that he did not finish last completely, but of the drivers running will not get a good points day. Although the points in class have been decent for him, is we'll have to wait and see what he can do for the rest of the season. But as far as interviews go, we're waiting for our GT2 winner to get in, but we have our GT3 leader, so we're going to pull him in for an interview right quick, and then we will get on with the race, or get on with the night. Hey, Corey, it is Anthony and Warren in the booth. You got us.
Yep.
Well, that was quite possibly one of the craziest races that we've had this season, and you managed to come out on top in class. Tell us how the race went from your end, and the battle in GT3 never really seemed to go away until the very end of the race, where everything kind of got stretched out. So your class was by far the most competitive class tonight.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's see. Before we had that second caution, I think I had a 15-second lead on the guy that was behind me. I think that was Scott Rankin, and he hadn't pit yet, so I had a decent lead, and then came in for tires. It wasn't long after I fueled whenever we had that second caution, and I think I probably could have pulled out a bigger gap on him, but I was trying to get my Xbox where it would show. I was trying to set up the live stream for Petit Le Mans, so I ended up making a few mistakes and nearly wrecked the car doing that.
Yeah, Petit Le Mans was happening as we were finishing our race. Their race ended as well, as I believe one of the Cadillac teams won that race. But tonight, you had a fantastic run. Was there any moment during the race where, especially with the prototypes got close to you, where you thought that it might have been something a little bit chaotic, as we saw the prototypes as soon as they got into GT traffic? It seems that there was where most of the problems happened. Were you fearful of the prototypes when they got up to you?
Not really. For the most part, they seemed pretty calm. I think there was one that I had to kind of slam on the brakes to let them by before the S's, because I didn't want to even attempt going too wide through the start of that. So, but that was pretty much it. So they were pretty clean for the most part.
Well, again, congratulations on your victory tonight. We look forward to seeing you throughout the rest of the season. If you go throughout the rest of the season, if you are indeed going to be a regular here, what are you looking for in the rest of the season going forward? As we have some pretty technical tracks coming up and a lot more sprint racing, and how confident you are during the longer races that we have this season?
I honestly have not looked at the schedule. The only because I basically got VIR is my home track, so I enjoy it on iRacing, and I'm pretty good here. So one of my friends, Brody Gardner, I think Sartaj, both of them had told me that they were going to be at VIR, and I was like, okay, then yeah, I'm going to race that, because I'm effectively Mr. VIR now. So I need to look at the rest of the schedule to see what it looks like, because I don't even know what's up next.
Well, we would love to see you here, and we enjoyed watching you race tonight. And you kind of deserve the term Mr. VIR, because you put on probably one of the cleaner runs tonight. And before we let you go, we have this thing on the Flatout Racing Network where if you're in the booth, you get to have some shout outs. So we'll give you a chance to do any shout outs if you'd like.
Proximity Racing sponsors Rexford Engineering, All Serve Doors, Trey Shuttlesworth Photography, and then just the Proximity Racing guys. So, yeah.
Well, that is your GT3 winner. He is Corey Hartz, and we will look forward to seeing him later in the season if he comes back. And you have a great rest of your night there, Corey.
Yep, thank you.
And now we will get our GT2 winner in here, that being Brody Gardner. Hey, Brody, it's Anthony and Warren in the booth. Do you have us?
Yep.
Well, it seems that you had this track figured out. A lot of drivers were having issues tonight as the track temps cooled off, the cars got more slick, and it seemed like it was a battle of the racetrack more or less than it was against other competitors. And we just want to know how your race went tonight from your perspective, as it seemed like both the Corvettes were fast tonight.
Yeah. Earlier in the race, I went more mistake free, but kind of later in the race, I lost my focus. I was multitasking, watching Petit Le Mans and doing a race, and I made a mistake, went off track, and got some damage. So I was just trying to not wreck the car in the last portion of the race, but um, yeah, I did a lot of practice and to get some speed out of my setup, and it worked. And overall, successful night, I'd say.
It was a very successful night. You've doubled down on your wins. I know you raced last week because you won last week at Daytona. And going now that you're a two-time winner in this season, going forward in the season, what are your overall goals? Do you think that you can get some more wins under your belt? Because we've still got a long way to go, and you might be in a position where you could very easily take this championship if you so choose to come to these races.
Yeah, if I have the tracks, I'll probably race. I'm enjoying this so far. It's been pretty fun. Um, there's a lot of things in this league that um, you don't get in other leagues, like the full course cautions. I'm really enjoying that. It's kind of more realistic, and um, but yeah, my goal is to win the championship. Um, I think it's a very possible goal. I think I can do it.
That's we're pulling for you here at all of us here at the USRA are pulling for you. And one more question for you: the Corvettes consistently have been probably the fastest cars in the GT2 category. We saw a BMW race tonight, and you were still be able to pull away from the BMW. How confident are you in the Corvette to go forward in the rest of the season? Because it seems like no matter what track you put these cars at, they're just consistently fast. So I guess the question is, how confident are you in the Corvette's speed and durability at some of the more tighter tracks? Because I believe Belle Isle's on the schedule as well.
I think it can be set up very well at almost any track. If you guys remember in week 13, the Corvette went to Belle Isle, and it seemed pretty good there. I think the Corvette can handle really well over the bumps too. So um, I think he can handle Belle Isle very well. Um, I won't be racing because Halloween night, but yeah, I'm sure Corvettes will dominate there too.
Well, that was Brody Gardner. Before we let you go here, we're going to give you a chance to do some shout outs.
Follow Wavy Bragod on Instagram for some epic hood moments, and shout out to Dan Neese. May have seen him in the prototype tonight. Owner of my team. Shout out to Chase Bonzer, owner of Proximity Racing, my other team. Um, yeah, Blue Chew, chew it and do it. That's all I got.
Well, that is Brody Gardner, the winner of GT2 tonight here at VIR, two-time winner this season. We look forward to seeing you again. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thank you.
And that was, again, our GT2 leader. Now we're going to get our overall winner and our LMP2 winner into the booth. That would be Mr. Justin Erb. Hey, Justin, it is Anthony and Warren in the Flatout Racing Network booth. You have us.
I have you.
Well, that was a crazy race for the prototype drivers. It seemed like no matter where you guys were, as soon as you got into traffic and when you were pushing really hard, it just seemed like that the track was fighting against your car, and there was braking zones were hit or miss sometimes. You had a couple offs yourself. The rest of the class had some offs. What was the race like from your perspective, knowing that these cars at this track was probably a hit or miss on whether or not you were going to get around the track?
Well, going into it, I knew when I was doing some of my own testing, I noticed that it's just a tight track. Traffic was going to be an issue anywhere around it. It was just the matter of getting past them. There's only maybe 2, 3, maybe good passing points for traffic. So it was going to be tough. The car was a tough thing to handle. I'm not too versed at this track, but it's definitely fun.
It was fun to watch tonight as well. It seemed like no matter what we were looking at, as soon as we would go to the prototypes or say something about the prototypes, something would happen in the prototypes, and I was like, I probably should stop talking about them. But uh, given the fact that you started this season quite literally facing the wrong direction, as back at Sebring, you went up on the nose of another driver and brought out our full course yellow. Given that that's where the season started, and now this is how the season's going right now, a winner at VIR. You've had some good finishes throughout this season. Was this win kind of a shock? I have to ask, because it was. I'll admit, Dan Neese and Dan Neese and Witt, they were very fast, and you had a fast car, but they were a little bit faster. Was it a shock to win tonight?
It certainly was. I know that they had the pace tonight. I'm not too sure what happened with both of them. But yeah, tonight was just a shock. I was just kind of cruising for a 3rd or 4th place finish. I wasn't really expecting much, and then lo and behold, it starts whittling down. I'm just thinking, wait a second, I can win this? Wait, what?
And it was crazy to watch because you had Blemmengrantz in front of you, and he had an off track into the tire barriers, which puts you in the lead. That's actually why. That's why the leader at the time, I believe, one of them, it was up in Oak Tree. That's where Nice went off track and ended up going into the tire barrier. And then, funny story involving Witt, he actually blew an engine. That's why he slowed down on the racetrack. So it was a cascade of different things that brought the lead of the race in prototype down to you versus Blemmengrantz. But that was a great battle throughout the entire race that you had all night long. And we just want to ask you, what's your goal for the rest of the season? It's a long way to go still. We have a mixed bag of different type of tracks, different types of environments, different types of race lengths, different types of different amount of cars that'll be on the track. It's going to be a long road, but you've put yourself in a position now where you've closed up the gap in points. You could possibly go for a championship here.
Yeah, that's the main goal for the season. My overarching goal is just be consistent, be smooth, just finish the race. With the win tonight, it kind of boosts my confidence for going into next week. I'm just looking to stay in the championship hunt for the rest of the season because I feel like I have a competitive car. It's just getting all the tracks down, getting them put into memory, and just being smooth, consistent, and just going for it and looking for a consistent season. That's all I'm looking for.
You've shown that you've had consistency tonight, pulling a fantastic win out of something that looked like it could have gone either way. No one really knew exactly what was going to happen at the end of this race, but you managed to defeat the track in these prototypes, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the season. We're going to let you have a moment to do any shout outs and what you have to say for the rest of the night.
All I really have to thank is the car for putting up with me, and I want to give a shout out to my dad for giving me all the motivation in the world to keep going and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, that is Justin Erb, and we look forward to seeing you in the rest of the season do well, and we look forward to seeing the points battle if it closes up between you guys, as it's looking very close, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
I look forward to seeing you guys too.
That was our prototype leader or winner and overall winner here tonight at VIR. And Warren, it was a crazy race, top to bottom, from the very first turn to the very last turn, nonstop action, something that we traditionally don't really get to see in endurance racing. This was more of a sprint race, though, so a lot on the line in a short period of time. Indeed, they did. The season only just beginning. 3 races in, 7 races to go. It's going to be a long road ahead for these drivers, but something that they can overcome with a good bit of driving and a good bit of luck, as we saw tonight for some of these drivers. But Warren, I want to thank you for joining me. I know you had to kind of had split attention tonight, dealing with on-track duties as well as commentating. But I want to thank you for stepping in. For something that was kind of last minute, and you did a very good job. Oh, well, you put a lot of weight on my shoulders just now. Oh man, I appreciate letting I appreciate you letting me do these races. I don't know why they keep letting me in the booth at FRN, but I'm thrilled to be doing these races for the USRA, and I hope that we get to do more races throughout the season. Our presence on FRN or the USRA on FRN is varied. We're not really sure. It's a week to week basis, but as soon as we know, we'll let all of you know. Although there is a lot of racing going on in the Flatout Racing Network, there's some races going on right now. In fact, you can go over there. I believe the FTF series is about ready to get their race underway, or they might be midway through their race at this point in time. So if you want to head on over there, you can watch that race. Sunday nights, I'm not too familiar what we got going on Sunday night right now, but I know that Monday we have the Slipstream Formula One series that is at 9 p.m. We also have a couple of another race that's happening at that time as well. I'd have to go back and look at the schedule again. And just a plethora of racing going on throughout the week to get your motorsports fill in. And once again, Warren, I'd like to say thank you and hope to see you again next week. And if we do, it's going to be something special. Road America is one of my favorite tracks, and I really want to do that. So, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But I digress. Thank you all so much for watching this presentation of the Flatout Racing Network, the USRA America Le Mans Series. Road America is next for these drivers. We will see you if we see you, and we will let you know if we do. Until then, I am Anthony McCurry. This is Warren Keith. We will see you next time on the Flatout Racing Network, and have a great night. Thank you for watching.